Hey, and welcome back to the Adventures in Advising podcast. As always, this is Matt Markin, and we have another exciting episode for you today. Our guest today is David Smith from Jefferson College. David Smith has been in higher education for over 30 years as an admissions counselor, music professor, and an academic administrator for several community colleges in Kansas, Missouri, and Nebraska. David has served Jefferson College since March 2021 as an advising specialist, working with STEM and fine arts and humanities transfer students. David also currently serves as president of the Missouri Academic Advising Association. He has given presentations on goal success attainment and academic coaching at state and regional conferences. David and his wife, Audrey, have 7 grown children and 14 grandchildren. Very cool. David, welcome to the Adventures in Advising podcast.
Thank you, Matt. I'm happy to be here, and I should also say we're expecting a great grandchild in June.
Whoa! Well,
Yeah.
Early congrats to you.
Yeah, thank you. We're looking forward to that. Definitely.
Very cool. Large household then.
Yes, it is.
So we were talking right before we started. I know typically we go into talking about your background, which we will, but you were sharing with me that, and by the time this gets posted, the region conference you'll be attending probably will have already passed. But share with listeners about what's upcoming for you, but will have already passed once this podcast episode goes live, about a presentation or a concurrent session you're doing.
Sure. So this presentation is about the mentoring program for Region 7. This was started 2 years ago, and really it's kind of, other regions have mentoring programs, and so I think the steering committee decided, well, we need to have one. And so essentially people sign up to either be mentors or mentees, and then with the coordinator of the program matches the mentors with the mentees, and so typically they get at least one. Most of the time they get 2. So I decided, because I had been in higher education for a long time and had several different kinds of roles, I really wanted to be able to share some of my experiences and knowledge with someone else, hoping it would be helpful for them. So I signed up to be a mentor, and the first year I had 2 mentees. This past year I just had one. I started out with 2, and then one of them for scheduling reasons had to drop out of the program, so I had one. The 2 that I had the first year, one was from Washington University, which is in St. Louis, just north of where I work and live, and then the other one works at the University of North Texas in Denton, and so she is going to do this presentation with me as the mentee. So it's kind of what we're doing is I'm kind of showing how I approached this project as a mentor. And then she's going to say, well, here's how it worked for me as a mentee. And so we're going to include some information from the person I worked with this past year. She's not able to attend the conference, but she's sending in some information for us. So I'm presenting with a young lady named Mary Paradosky. She works in the College of Business at the University of North Texas. And then our other kind of shadow presenter, her name is Evelyn Irigoyen, and she works at Garden City Community College, which is way out in western Kansas. She works in the TRIO program out there. So we're really looking forward to this because we want more people to join. In fact, for this next cohort, we have more people sign up for this than any other year previous. So I'm really looking forward to this. Hopefully that we can gather some more support for this, because it's really a good program. I get just as much out of it, if not more, than anybody else does in the process.
Yeah, 100%. So you were mentioning about having many years in higher ed, and we kind of heard a little bit from your bio, but David, can you expand upon that? Kind of give us your origin story, your path in higher ed?
Sure. So I'm from Kansas. I was born and raised there. I've lived in Nebraska and Colorado and Wyoming and Missouri also. And I was a student at a community college, the community college that all of my high school classmates typically went to. Was just down the road from us. And I tell students today that my tuition and fees back then were $15 per credit hour. And I had scholarships that covered all of that. So I went to school basically for free for 2 years. Um, and then I got my bachelor's degree at Southwest Baptist University, which is actually here in Missouri. It's north of Springfield, and my bachelor's degree is in music. And so my intent was to go back to the community college where I went as a student to be the vocal music professor. And eventually, I ended up doing that. But I took a rather circuitous route to get there. So after I finished my bachelor's degree, I went to graduate school at Pittsburgh State University. I was the choral assistant there, and I got a master's degree in community college teaching. And then I got my first job after that was as a recruiter, as an admissions counselor, which was great. I mean, I really didn't know a whole lot about how to recruit. And back then, this was in 1991. This was before we had internet available to all of us. In fact, I didn't have a computer on my desk until probably the last 2 or 3 months that I worked there. And it really was more of an intranet thing. First email I ever sent was to our IT guy, and I said something about the fact that he looked like Jimmy Stewart, something like that. Anyway, so my first week there, I had a list of students I had to contact. They were on what was the rolling paper with the green stripes? I just can't remember what that is. A dot matrix printer. It's a dot matrix printout of 200 students. So and of course, this was in December, so I had to hand sign 200 Christmas cards that week and to get them sent. So it was quite a bit of a different world, but I learned so much about recruiting that really helped me when I started teaching full time. And so after that job, I went up to Highland, Kansas, which is up in Northeast Kansas, to the community college up there, and was the vocal music teacher for about 2.5 to 3 years. And boy, that admissions experience was so valuable, and learning how to contact students, what I needed to talk with them about, and so on. From there, I kind of took an aside from higher ed for a couple of years. I was a minister of music at a fairly decently sized church in the Kansas City area for a couple of years. Went back into higher education. I went to KU as a doctoral student. I taught part-time. I worked at a community college as a supervisor in the evenings. Then after that is when I really started teaching full-time for good, at least for the time. I taught for 13 years at Neosho County Community College, which is in Chanute, which is in southeast Kansas. That's really where I got most of my teaching and administrative experience, because I was a division chair for a year there. Really enjoyed it, and I made so many good friends there. Learned a lot. I wasn't perfect, made a lot of mistakes too. And it was from there that I determined I was going to look at being administrator. So just so happened that down the road from Chanute, pretty close to where we lived there in Kansas at the time, the college there was looking for a dean of instruction. And so I applied, and just so happened that the vice president for academic affairs had been at Neosho County. She was one of our administrators there. So I had an in route on that job, and I was there for a couple of years. And then the vocal music job opened up at the college where I was a student. So I did that. I did that for 2 years, and then took early retirement. Went and did a few other things outside of education. Decided that was not what I wanted to do, and I wanted to get back into education, but I didn't want to be in the classroom anymore. I was kind of done with that on a full-time basis anyway. I thought, well, what if I work in student services? So I looked for positions in admissions, because I'd done that already. And then I looked for positions in advising, because I'd done advising all the way through my faculty experiences. Even though it wasn't a full-time, I knew how to enroll students. I knew about degree planning and those kinds of things. And so with this job, I applied and got an interview in January. This was like in the middle of COVID. So the interview was on Zoom, and that day was when my wife had COVID. So she was quarantined in our bedroom, and the grandkids that live with us then couldn't go to school. So I was doing school with them. And so I had to tell them, look, you need to be quiet for an hour. I had to tell the animals in the house, be quiet for an hour so I can have this interview. And then I had a second interview with Jefferson, and then they hired me on Valentine's Day, and I started on March 1st. And I've been here nearly 4 years, and I have to tell you, Matt, of all the experiences I've had in higher education, and most of them have been very good, this has been the best. I mean, the people I work with, we all get along, and we just don't get along. I think we all have a genuine affection for each other that is very friendly. We don't agree on everything, but we know how to talk about things. And I've just been very impressed with how our department, we have our advising offices are in one end of the hall, financial aid is on the other end of the hall, and they're probably the best financial aid people I've ever worked with. And they're, they know how to work with students. They're positive. They're friendly. They're just, this is overall, this has been a great experience. It's not been perfect. We have our issues, but by and large, I really enjoyed this experience, and I'm working with the students on this side of the equation, helping them not just plan their degrees, but trying to help them succeed, which kind of led me into the academic coaching arena. In NACADA, there is an academic coaching community. And so I joined that when I joined NACADA several years ago, and really got a lot of good information about that, which kind of led me into doing presentations on academic coaching. So I did that for our state NACADA conference. I did it again at the region. It was selected as best in conference for that year. So I got a paid trip to New Orleans for the Region 4-7 conference last February to do that presentation. And then I also got to do it for our state community college association back in November. So, when I looked at coaching, I realized, well, I've been doing this for years, because when you teach students individually, which I did a lot of that, when you're a music teacher, you teach private lessons. Mm-hmm. In the credit arena, we call that applied music. And so you work with students a lot with individually. So, and a lot of what I did was really what coaching is about. You determine a plan of success with some goals. You create a plan to meet those goals, and then you manage the plan while you're working toward it. It's like my friend Tasha Urich says, it's not so much the end result. It's really what happens in between the start and the finish. How much have you learned in the process? And how much do you grow in the process as a student? And so that is really what has attached me to the whole coaching profession. So right now I am working on a Doctor of Education degree from the American College of Education, which is an online graduate school housed in or based in Indiana. And it's in leadership. And I want to do my research, my dissertation research on coaching, life coaching, academic coaching, executive coaching, leadership coaching, because it really is, in many ways, it's just the way I've taught for years. So that's really why I'm accustomed to it and why I feel so passionate about it. And within that is kind of, I approach my mentoring process in the mentoring program as a coach. Mm-hmm. So when I start with a mentee, I say, okay, this is how we're going to do this. And you're going to direct this process. I'm just here to walk alongside you like a coach would, and to make sure that you stay, on the path that you've created. And if we need to make changes, I'll help you do that. But basically, this is your plan, not mine. I don't create it for you. You're the one that creates it, and I help you along the way.
Yeah, and it kind of connects when we had talked prior to this recording. You had mentioned like a football game and a coach, where the coach is, walk with the student as if a football game, and a coach is walking with the player on the sidelines.
Mm-hmm. Right. There is a great video of a clip from a movie called, let's see, is it Fighting the Giants? Something I'll have to look for it. Anyway, there's a great video. The name of the video clip is called "The Death Crawl," and so it's a scene in this movie where this football coach is he's coaching in a private Christian school, and the players just really aren't into it. They're kind of lackadaisical. So he's trying to instill in them that they can actually win games. So they have this drill that they do called the death crawl. So he gets one of the larger players, one of the defensive tackles, to crawl on his, not on his hands and knees, on his hands and his feet, while he's got one of his teammates on his back. And so what the coach decides to do is he puts a blindfold on this tackle and says, okay, you only have to carry this guy 20 yards. So he starts to carry, and he's coaching him as he's going along. Don't quit, don't quit, don't quit. And he actually goes the entire length of the field and doesn't realize it until he's there. He takes his blindfold off and he says, see, you're in the end zone. And you didn't realize it. And, what did you learn through that whole process? And to keep going, to keep fighting, to keep striving, to keep learning. And that really is a great analogy of an illustration of how the academic coaching process goes. I mean, I'm not going to make my students do a death crawl, and that's not the idea. But the idea is to help you succeed, what I need to do is to encourage you to keep going. There's a worksheet I have them do called the brainstorming worksheet, where they, in their goals, they have a table that says, okay, to reach this goal, I need to stop doing this. I need to do less of this. I need to start doing this. I need to do more of this, and then I need to keep doing this. And they have a table of, and so for my mentees, especially, that's a living document. I mean, they update that every time we meet. And even when I meet with my academic coaching students, they update that as well. So that just kind of helps them keep going, which is really what, at least the students that I talk to, that's really what they need. I mean, a lot of them come in and they're discouraged because college isn't quite what they thought it was going to be. And, it's different than high school. We all know that. We've been through that. We know that for sure. But it's really different for them. I mean, an example might be and I don't know, maybe you find this true too, Matt, where you are, but there is a little more resistance for our students to take courses online because they've been through that with COVID. Now we're kind of edging out of that because the COVID students are kind of now graduate, at least in our area, because we're a 2-year college. They're kind of moving on now, but a lot of students said, I don't want to take any online classes because I've been through that. And now our online classes are not the kind of online classes they took in high school. I mean, it's not structured the same, but still there's some resistance to that. And so, and they may start out in the first 2 weeks or 3 and they'll email me and say, this class is awfully hard. And yeah, it is, but it's the class that you need. So here's what I need to do to try to help you succeed. So here are the resources I need to point you to. And maybe you find this true also, but there are too many students I have that are sit across from me late in the semester wishing they had asked for help for a class. Calculus is one of those. And it's too late for them to withdraw because we have a date where they can't withdraw afterwards, and it's too late, and they end up either getting a barely passing grade or failing, and I'm not sure how I can help them. And so I try to stress to every new student especially, do not be afraid to ask for help. That is not a sign of weakness. And the first person you ask is your professor. And then I talk with them about how to communicate with their professors. And they talk about this in College 101, but having been one for years, and typically as an instructor myself, my door was always open. The only time it was ever closed was when I was having a private conversation with someone, or if I was grading finals, I usually closed my door then. But typically my door was open. But that's not true for every faculty member. So, what I tell my students is, if you need to talk with your instructor, that don't try to catch them right before or right after class, because their mind is not where it needs to be for you. Yeah. What you need to do is either go see them during their office hours, which they really have no idea what office hours mean. We try to cover this in orientation. Sure. That's where they're, one administrator I worked with said, this is where we pay the faculty to sit in their office and do nothing. And it may not be that extreme, but really they're supposed to be available. during those
Sure.
times, or make an appointment so that the instructor has your full attention. And then the next person you talk to is me.
Mhm.
Either make an appointment with me or call me or email me or something so that I can point you to some resources that you need to get the help that you need. So how effective that is, I don't have any way of gauging that right now. I probably should come up with some way of figuring out how many students actually ask for help and how many actually get the help and actually use the help that they're given. If they go to, we do more math tutoring than any other subject. I don't know, maybe if that's true in your case. Um, we have 2 professional tutors that's all they do is tutor math, and then we have peer tutors. Uh, but I really want students to know that it's all right for them to ask for help. That
Mhm.
they're not in this alone. Now, we don't do the work for them, and I make that pretty clear. But we're committed to trying to help them succeed as best we can.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's also just students realizing they need help because we go over a lot of stuff during orientation
Mm-hmm.
and kind of similar to you, you're telling students, yeah, ask for help if you need the help. Um, but I think there are some students that, yeah, they might be nervous and, scared to talk to the professor or come and talk to their advisor or an academic coach. But others, it's almost by the time they realize, oh yeah, I probably should have asked for help. Then, yeah, then it's too late. And then that's when they show up in your office. And on one hand, it's like, I appreciate you coming in, keep doing this. But maybe next time, if it does happen,
Right.
let's do it a little bit earlier. Let's see how we can possibly salvage the grade at this point. But let's go over all different scenarios.
Yes, precisely. And lately I've been telling them, ask for help before you think you need it,
Hmm.
because that's usually when you do need it. I mean, to try to be a little bit proactive. That's not my favorite word, but that's really what it is. I mean,
Yeah.
don't be afraid, because there are. I mean, if you look at you sitting in a typical history class and you've got 30, 35 students in there. Look at every student that's in there, and all of them, with rare exception, are going to want help in there. Look in the calculus class. What I find, and I don't know what areas you typically advise, Matt, but I have discovered that for my um, engineering students, they struggle the most with calculus 2. Now, I'm not sure why that is, because I'm not as familiar perhaps with the curriculum as maybe I should be. My math interests are more in statistics than in
Hmm.
calculus, but there's just something about Calc 2 that's a really kind of difficult hump for them to get over. And I know with me as a music student, I thought of the music theory sequence that I took. I thought music theory 2 was the most difficult. So maybe it's something about the 2 that's there. I don't
Yeah.
know. But I've had too many that sit across from me and say, I don't know what to do about my grade. And I just have to tell them, well, we talked about this at the beginning of the semester. We talked about this when we enrolled, that whenever you need help, you need to ask. I,
Mhm.
I can't help you if I don't know what you need. And so
Yeah.
I can't do it for them as much as sometimes we would like to. I have to put some of the onus on them,
Hmm.
because it's their education, it's not mine, and they're the ones that in many ways own it. And so they're the ones that kind of need to maintain it as much as they can, which is kind of where coaching comes in. And I don't get to do a lot of that because it's a rather involved process, even as short term as it is. I think of coaching, in at least for academic purposes, in what I do. That's more of a short term project, as we're looking at one particular goal,
Hmm.
studying effectively for this particular test. What is it that you need to know? How do you need to organize your notes? I remember having a student, I had her show me my notes, or her notes, in a biology class. They were uh, perfect. I mean, but she had no idea how to use them. She had highlighted some things, so I said, well, why did you highlight this? I don't know. I just thought I needed to. So we had to work on, okay, taking the information that you got, which is great. Now, how do we organize it for you to succeed on this next exam? I
Yeah.
had a student who um, decided he had to give up the habit of, while he's doing homework, watching YouTube shorts. And he said that, I want to make that a reward for 30 minutes of studying.
Yeah.
So, that's that's really where coaching comes in. And I wish I could do that with more students. I just, I have right now my caseload is about 250. It was about a little over 300, but they took one of my majors away and gave it to somebody else, which is fine. So I can't really do that with all 250 of my students. So when I have conversations with them, and if they say something like, I really struggle with taking tests, that's a perfect coaching opportunity right there. Because I don't want them to hide behind that. Now, if they have a documented disability, then that's something different. But I mean, if that's something that they're really using as kind of I don't want to say a crutch, but a kind of something to hide behind, that's a perfect coaching opportunity. Okay, look, I can help you with how to take tests because I've taken them, a lot of them, and I've given a lot of them. Mm-hmm. So, and I can help you organize your notes so that studying becomes more effective. You have a whole list of different study methods that you can choose from. So that's kind of how I get my coaching students, is basically on what they say to me in a conversation.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I guess that's a question too. Like trying to find, how do you balance that where it's like, okay, you have your caseload, you have your meetings with your students on your caseload. Based off those conversations, they might say something that triggers you where it's like, okay, I can definitely implement some academic coaching here. But I would imagine too that also takes time.
Sure.
So how do you balance all that within a certain time frame of working with these students, especially in when you have a case, when you have these students you have to meet with, but then depending on when they do meet with you, are you having follow-up appointments with these students as well?
Right. So that's an excellent question. Normally coaching happens after the semester begins. Maybe after the first couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. And at that point, our enrollment period is typically over. So we have a space of, depending on which semester it is, between when let's just say for this semester. So our semester enrollment really ended 2 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. So there's a period of 2 weeks there where I'm doing other things with my caseload, like we have an early alert system. So I deal with those. Right now we have what's called a first quarter feedback project where faculty can give feedback on every student if they want to, or specific students that are having trouble. So we follow up on that. Those are both of those are great prompts for getting with someone and say, look, I can help you with this particular problem if you will allow me. I don't force myself on. I'm just offering this service to you because that's what I want to do to help you succeed. And then if they take that, if they say yes, let's do that. Typically, the coaching process is about maybe 3 to 4 weeks with meetings every week. Now, normally those meetings, I like to have them face to face, but a virtual meeting will work all right. I typically don't like to do it over the phone or email. That just doesn't work very well because I like to be able to see the person when I'm talking with them.
Right.
But we meet. First thing we do is determine, okay, here's what we need to work on, and then we develop a plan. And so that plan really lasts for the next 2 or 3 weeks. Here are some steps you need to take. I have them brainstorm some goals. I have them brainstorm some actions that they need to do and stop doing and so on. And then when we meet in subsequent meetings, I ask them about those. So you said you were going to do this. So how is that working out for you? You said you were going to stop doing this. Have you stopped doing that? So I bring to them a little bit of a measure of accountability in a friendly way. I mean, I don't crack the whip or anything, but in that activity, one thing I want to do really is hold their feet to the fire. If they said they were going to do this, and then they didn't, the reason I want to know why is not to chide them, but to say, is there something else we can do? Or is there some other direction we need to go? So, and maybe after 3 weeks, that's when the test occurs and they're done. And if they want to work on something else, they choose something else to work on. But the coaching thing doesn't take really all that much time. Mm-hmm. As long as I stay on top of because I take notes. I have a form that I use that I take notes on, and I do that in my own private coaching practice, where I've coached I've done life coaching and I've done leadership coaching. I have a form that I fill out, and I use a lot of those materials for my academic coaching. I have an intake form. I have this action brainstorming worksheet. I have a list of study things, and um, I kind of know what I'm doing with that, so I know how to stay on top of things and what I need to prepare for the next meeting, and then we need to bring it to a close.
Mhm.
If we don't do that, this is not something we do week by week by week by week for the whole semester, because it
Yeah.
doesn't really work very well that way.
So you mentioned like there's certain forms you fill out, intake forms.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have the students fill out any forms or writing down anything?
Yes, so I send them an intake form. It's a Word document that has text boxes they can type in and fill out, um, and then the identifying their goals is another Word document they can just type right in, and then the brainstorming worksheet, the table. I should really send these to you so you can see them. This table I actually got from it's actually a free form that I found on a coaching site that has a lot of free form. This has been such a great tool for me, but it's just like an Excel table, and I make it as a document that they can type into, and then they, as we're working, they send the intake form to me, and there are questions on there. Like, one question is, if you were to trust me enough for me to coach you, what are two things I can say to you when you are stuck?
Mm.
Um, that helps me to know how I can communicate better with the student, because I know what to say when they're stuck.
Yeah.
Things like that. So they
Sure.
tell me about their situation, what they want to work on, and so on. And then I kind of keep that I have a Google Drive, and I have a folder that I keep all that in. And that's what I refer back to that at every coaching meeting. And
Yeah.
then the form that I fill out myself is something I keep for my own personal information, just so I have a record of what we talked about, so that I can bring that back. Because we also have action steps that we do. I know in other coaching situations, and also in therapy and counseling, they have homework. I typically call those action steps,
Mhm.
or action steps rather than homework. So things they have to do before the next meeting.
Yeah.
But they kind of decide what those things are based on how their goal is going and what their habits are.
Yeah.
So, but I type that into my form that I keep so that I can refer back to that at the next meeting.
Gotcha.
So I'll send all that stuff to you, Matt, so you can kind of take a look at it and see
Hey,
what.
I appreciate that. Yeah, please do. Now, you do academic coaching, you do life coaching. So
Mhm.
I'm curious with this. Do you find that what would you say might be some of the similarities, but maybe if any differences between academic coaching and life coaching?
Well, academic coaching in the way I do it, and in other college settings, they have what are called student success coaches.
Mhm.
And so these are people who stay with that student through their entire matriculation. Um, so they do a lot of not just academic things, but they do a lot of life coaching. They kind of they'll they'll talk with the student about, okay, so what's your living arrangement like, and is that working out for you? Do we need to look at something else? What's your work situation like? How many hours are you working per week, and how can we make that work for you as well as your academics? So that is a very good way of doing academic coaching. My college doesn't have a college that has a coaching program. This is something I
Mhm.
do kind of on my own.
Gotcha.
So that is really more of a focused activity.
Mhm.
With life coaching, I approach it very much the same way, because I approach it in a goal success oriented view.
Mhm.
So with life coaching, when I work with someone, and in leadership coaching, I will use pretty much the same tools and very much the same intake form, with some exceptions, especially I have a separate mentoring one. I have a separate leadership coaching one. I've worked with a couple of brand new administrators at other colleges in Missouri in leadership coaching, just to get the experience. But it's very much the same kind of process. I work with them and say, okay, what is it that what is the issue we need to work on first? They may choose three things if it's a typical life coaching deal. Where they may do things. Okay, what's the one we need to work on right now?
Mhm.
And so let's devise a plan to where it's one thing at a time. And that's kind of how academic coaching is for me. Now, with the mentoring project, this is something that goes on for the entire year. So I have them select 3 goals that they need to work on, and then maybe 2 or 3 secondary goals that if they've met one of their primary goals, then we'll move one of those secondary goals up into the primary area and start working on that. And so that's more of an ongoing process with them. That's why on that action brainstorming worksheet, that's a living document for them. That's really the main tool that I use with them. I have other things that I will give them, some other resources that I've found in other coaching situations. Depending on what it is that they're working on, I'll send them stuff. But primarily, I work with that brainstorming worksheet because that just seems to be working the best in the situations I'm working in. But to go back to your question, life coaching and academic coaching to me are very similar in that I work on goal attainment and success, and what is it that you are learning between the start and the finish. So when we do kind of the debriefing afterwards, that's what I'll ask. So what did you learn about yourself in this process? What did you learn about the skill that you were working on? Do you think you grew in that? We've measured it this way. Do you think you can apply this now to other things that you're doing? Because that's really what we need to be able to do. So there are a lot of similarities. The differences, of course, are with life coaching, it's not necessarily just academic things. I mean, it could be, I need to be more diligent in doing my housework, or I want to read more. So what do I need to do to if I want to read 3 books a month? Well, how do I even accomplish that? Well, you have to carve out time for that. So I'll tell students, do you need help working with time? Mm-hmm. This is new for a lot of new students. They've been used to going to class all day, every day. Right. You're not doing that when you're in college. I had to learn a lot of that the hard way, and I failed a lot. I mean, I didn't fail any classes, but I have to be honest with you, Matt. There are a lot of classes that I wasn't accountable, so I just didn't go. Yeah. And I paid for that eventually, academically, but. So we talk about that. This is one thing that's different. Another thing that's different is you're taking semester-long classes as opposed to year-long classes. Mm-hmm. So everything is going to be compressed, and especially if you're taking summer classes, it's even going to be more compressed. So you've got to figure out, if you're working especially, how are you going to carve out time to study and do whatever reading and writing you need to do. So those are things that I work on with students as much as I can. And I can't do it with everybody, but I try to be a little bit proactive in finding students who need that work, and then offering my service to them.
Yeah. So it's almost like, based off of your experience, you're able to implement this in your practice working with students. But as an advising specialist specifically, what would you say like your responsibilities are?
So I advise all of the students that I have are going to be transfer students. So they are working on either the Associate of Arts degree, or we have an Associate of Science degree in engineering and biology. One in engineering, one in biology. We're getting ready to have one in chemistry. And then we have Associate of Fine Arts degrees in art and music. Mm-hmm. So all of those are designed for students to earn and then transfer to a 4-year institution. Mm-hmm. So one of the things I do is I work with the faculty in my areas, along with the administrators, the associate deans, and the dean of instruction in our academic area, as far as articulation agreements with our partner schools. For example, our largest transfer partner is the Southeast Missouri University, which is in Cape Girardeau, which is about an hour or so south of where I live. So it's about an hour and a half from Hillsboro. So we work a lot with them on how our associate degrees transfer into their programs. But we have other, Missouri Baptist University is another strong partner. In engineering, University of Missouri Science and Technology in Rolla. That's how we've really designed our Associate of Science degree in engineering. So part of my job is to help them start to navigate that transfer process, because it can be daunting at times, depending on where you're going and what you're studying. And so I work with them on that. help them, with their schedules. I will typically try to talk them out of withdrawing from a class, unless unless there's just no other answer, for several reasons. One, that affects their financial aid. We have a program here in Missouri called A Plus, specifically for community college students to get their first 2 years done with their tuition paid by the state of Missouri. But there are some restrictions on that. One is there's a grade point that they have to maintain. They have to complete 12 hours per semester. If they retake a class, the program doesn't pay for that. So for those reasons, as well as others, I typically want to make sure that that's exactly what they want to do, because it's not always in their best interest to withdraw from a class. So I have those conversations with them. They already know, because I've told them in my initial conversations, if you want to withdraw from a class, I will probably try to talk you out of it, and unless it's the only option, the last option. So we talk about that. We have an early alert system where if the faculty member says this student's not coming to class, or they have poor study habits or what, so I reach out to that student and say, okay, what's going on? Are you having issues? And we have a mechanism, or a group called the care team, which if the student's having some personal issues, I can refer them to this care team using the Maxient reporting. I don't know if you use that or not. That's how we communicate with our compliance office. If the student is having some personal issues, whether it's at home or at work, or if it's mental health, something along those lines. But that's something I kind of need to know a little bit about before I make a referral. Right. And then I always tell students, you can always come and talk with me, but you kind of have to make an appointment, because our offices are housed within student records. So we have to be behind a locked door, which that's one thing I do miss from being a faculty member or having an office out in a regular place, because there's no student traffic unless students are coming in with their advisors to their appointments. So I don't have anybody that actually just comes by and says hi, unless I happen to be out at the front desk. So, but I always encourage them, look, you can come and talk with me about anything. You can email me about anything, but there may be some things where you need to make an appointment, because there may be an extended conversation we have to have. Yeah. So I wish at a 2-year college, and I learned this as being a faculty member in an activity, music, you only get them for a couple of years usually. And so I try to keep track of them after they leave as much as I can. I can't do that with everybody, but as much as I can make a more than just a professional relationship with them, if I can just kind of make a little bit of a personal tie with them, just ask how they're doing, find out how they're doing, help them with the transfer process, find out how they're doing with that, and so on. That, to me, I think I'm doing my job, and I really enjoy it. I didn't think I would enjoy it as much as I do. It's not, there are times when I'm thinking, gosh, I don't know if I'm cut out for this or not, but for the most part, because of the people I work with, in the state of Missouri through McCata, the board that we have, they are awesome people. I'm an outsider because I'm from Kansas, so I haven't been in Missouri all that long. Most of our board members have been in Missouri all their lives, and so they know the ins and outs of how things work. And so I just sit in my role as president. All I really do is kind of steer the boat. They do most of the work. I just want to make sure that we're going in the right direction, and I think we are. Our organization is growing after the pandemic kind of did in a lot of our members as far as membership, but we're back, to about 180, I think, membership, something like that, or maybe it's about 180. So I'm really happy about that, and not only that, our community college membership has gone up quite a bit, which is really something. When I joined the board 2 years ago, that's really something I wanted to work on, was getting more community college membership, and we've done that. So those people are just awesome, and so I give a shout out to my colleagues at Jefferson College, and my colleagues in McCata, and the people even I've worked with on Region 7. I haven't worked with them all that much, but I enjoy getting to know them through the region meetings that I've been involved in. So it's just been a great experience for me, and I just really wasn't sure what to expect, but this really has been the best job I've ever had. And I've had a lot of good jobs, but this has been the best one.
Well, let me ask you this. Because you had a pretty lengthy and good career in higher ed prior to the advising specialist role,
Mm-hmm.
and in coming out of retirement. Has your mentality changed at all, like with work and life pre-retirement and post-retirement?
Well, yes. If for no other reason, before retirement, I was a teacher and an administrator, full time. Now I'm in student services, which is a necessary arm of higher education. But the philosophy may be a little bit different. I remember one conversation I had with my previous supervisor who retired last year, and I don't remember what the actual issue was about. But she looked at me and she says, "You're treating this as if you were a faculty member." And I thought, well, yeah, because that's really pretty much all I've done for most of my life. So I've had to look at advising. It's kind of, I want the students to take responsibility for what they've chosen to do. I told them over and over, I'm not going to do your work for you, and you shouldn't expect your teacher to do your work for you. But what my job is, once I get you in the place where you need to be, I need to be able to help you succeed to the extent that I can without actually doing your work for you. So that's why I kind of look at advising in a way as being a coach. So that's what I really enjoy about it, is helping students succeed. Does every student succeed? No. And it's in part because maybe sometimes I haven't done the things I need to do. In part, it's because the student just simply doesn't know how to succeed, because nobody has really walked alongside with them. Maybe this is a different experience for them. They're away from home. Even if they still live at home, they're driving somewhere to school where they haven't been before typically. So it's a culture shock. It was a culture shock for me when I was a student, and things were much different when I was a student. I mean, we didn't have computers. I remember the first computer I ever worked on was a Radio Shack TRS 80, and I was trying to teach myself the basic language, and I didn't succeed with that. So when I didn't ever took a computer class until I was in graduate school in the early 90s, and it was on an Apple II GS computer, and we learned how to use AppleWorks. And I'm thinking, how did I ever type papers on a typewriter, even an electric typewriter? So, well, now, they have all kinds of technological aids that can use that I'm just not as familiar with as I probably should be. I'm teaching a class this semester. I'm teaching music appreciation. It kind of happened at the last minute. And so they're using an e-text, which I have never used. I have a hard copy of the book, but I've never used an e-text. So right now I'm just kind of using the technology that I know about and that I know they know about, to maybe when I teach it another time, I'll know more how to utilize the resources in that e-text. But it really is, it's different even within the past. I mean, I retired in 2018, so that's been less than 10 years ago. Even between then and now, it's much different technologically. And the students are always different. They're different every year. I mean, there are some similarities, but they've all had different types of experiences that they have to either use to their advantage or work through. And that, I learned that just by talking with them, and maybe their parents if they're there in the initial advising conversations. And a lot of times that's fascinating. Sometimes it's frustrating, especially when I have helicopter parents. And there was another term I heard not long ago. Bulldozer parents. That's a new one, where it's they're not just hovering, they're pushing the dirt. So. But I think every class of student is different in some way, but there are some similarities. I just, in my conversations with them, I have to, in my notes, I kind of have to write in there, this is going to be a need here, and this is going to be something they're going to have to look at later. And I might note on there, I know that they say they're having trouble taking tests, so we might do some coaching later, and so on. But this has been a great educational experience for me, because I use some of my teaching skill in the advising conversation as well.
Yeah. No, the one I heard about a few years ago, but I guess it's been around for a while, is like the submarine parent.
Oh, the
And
submarine parent.
yeah, so
Oh,
that's like a parent who's available to help their child when needed. So, but they
yeah.
try to
Uh-huh.
help their child take charge of their lives, and then they'll
Right.
help out if they need to jump in.
Right. I don't know that, because I mean, we put four of our kids through college,
Mhm.
and it's very tempting to, especially when you're a higher education professional, to go in and do it for them.
Mhm.
Uh, but I think we successfully resisted that. I know with one of my kids, she washed out one semester. I mean,
Mhm.
just washed out, and it was difficult for me not to step in and do something about it. But
Sure.
that was something that she had to experience, and it was really the best thing for her. And she ended up graduating well, and she's got a good job, and but she had to go through that, and I had to let her go through that.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I said, every class is different. Parents, even though they have similar characteristics, they're different. They're going to approach it different. A lot of them that I talk to have never been in college, so they really don't even know what to expect.
Mhm.
So you have to be sensitive to that as well. Some of that, Matt, I think, is the language that we use. Because we use college speak
Sure.
around here, and they don't know what that means. So we have to couch it in terms that everyone's going to understand, at least initially. But I think the student um, will need to acquire some of that language eventually, because they need to be able to direct some of their education, especially when they transfer.
Mhm.
So that's just something that I try to kind of keep an eye on. With 250 students, sometimes that's quite difficult. But
Yeah.
again, I enjoy what I do. I am blessed to be where I am. I'm blessed to have the people that I work with, and they're just it's an awesome profession, in my view.
Yeah. I think it's a perfect way to end the interview. I just glanced at the time, and time has flown by.
It
We
has,
are
hasn't it?
at
Yeah.
time. Yeah, fascinating discussion. Thanks so much for being on the podcast. Chat about academic coaching, your background, life coaching, similarities, differences, students, all that good stuff.
Well, thank you, Matt. I really do appreciate you having this conversation with me, and you do such good work, and we appreciate you so much in the work that you do. Thank you so much.
And we